I'm Chad Ruthermans.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And welcome to NOCLIP Pocket, Bubbles by the Billions. Today, we're going to be talking about Rascal. Again, unfortunately. A game that was developed by Traveler's Tales and published by Psygnosis and was released in 1998 on the PlayStation.
But first, if you give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
So, if you missed the last episode, what happened was we're doing a month called Mystery May, and within that theme month, we roll a die and pull from a table of games that we've had on our list for a long time and do really want to play because they're very good or important, or they caught our eye for some reason or another, but they just never made it onto the schedule yet. However, if you rolled a 1 on that table, there was an entirely separate list of things that could have come up. And we, of course, did roll a 1 on our very first episode, in fact, and then rolled on that separate table. And so here we are. If you're new to the show, Rascal is a perennial favorite, I guess.
Yes.
An episode that we did way back in the day, and it's an episode where we had like 5 people.
Yeah, 2 guests.
Yeah.
We had 3 people hosting at the time, and we had 2 guests.
And they were all talking into a single microphone. So in a way, even though we didn't want to do Rascal again, it is good to get an epilogue on Rascal out of here, because it means that there's going to be a quality. We can kind of explain the recurring jokes about Rascal that keep coming up.
Yeah. I re-listened to the Rascal episode today at work, and surprisingly listenable for how old it is.
For how old and how technically weird it all was.
Yeah. It sounds like it was recorded in mono, but other than that, you could hear everybody, and it's an entertaining conversation. I was surprised.
Yeah. But now you can listen to I don't know, it might still be worth going back. You let us know.
Yeah.
In the comments so that other people don't go back if it in fact is not worth going back to. But yeah, it's amusing because Rascal is a platformer game, and is one that is widely reviled as being one of the worst games that was released on the PlayStation, which, as is typically the case with games that are the worst of something, it's usually like the most well-known bad thing.
Yeah.
But tackling Rascal way back in the day was an exercise that I don't think that we were fully prepared for in the way that we definitely are now. So what I want to start out with is saying that Rascal really is much better than we gave it credit for. That's not true. Rascal is terrible, and now I have new and more interesting ways to describe that. I think Rascal's biggest problem is that the game is a platformer, and it does everything in design to make platforming not doable. Not like unfun, but unaccomplishable. It's as if you were tasked with building a wall, and somebody said, here are your materials. It's one pumpkin and a Chevy Silverado. And you just had to kind of figure out how that was going to work, because the controls don't make any sense for a platformer, and the camera doesn't function in any way. And the PlayStation controller that it was built for doesn't have 2 analog sticks. And there were just a lot of problems just from the very outset of making this game work.
Mm-hmm. So I actually also watched a YouTube video of the director of the game talking about it earlier today. And apparently the game originally used full analog control, but because of the popularity of Tomb Raider, the publisher insisted on using tank controls because Tomb Raider did. And apparently that messed with the camera system they had too, because they had the camera programmed to just stay within the walls of the level. And for some reason that conflicts with the tank controls. Like when you back up, it like wants to push it outside the wall. And because of the way they had it programmed, it doesn't let it.
Right. So it gets very uncomfortably close to you.
Yes, so not to make it unfun by just explaining those two issues right away.
Sure.
But I found that really interesting to listen to the guy talk about it. So if you're here, you're probably interested in Rascal. I'd recommend the video. Just look up Rascal developer commentary.
Right.
And you'll probably find it pretty easily. But yeah, the game almost does kind of feel like a joke if games were easy enough to make and cheap enough to produce that you could make one as a joke. Because yeah, like it's a platformer and it has tank controls and the camera doesn't work at all and you can't control it. So yeah, it does exactly what you said. It just throws up the two biggest obstacles it possibly could in the way of platforming.
Yeah, it is. It really is just like a game in the wrong genre for what it is. Like, and I mean, this is one of those things. You're talking about an interview or just a commentary done by one of the developers of the game.
Yeah, I think I don't know what the explanation is, but he has like an older build of the game that he's like showing while he talks about what happened to Rascal. So I guess that surfaced, so he wanted to put something on YouTube about it.
Sure. I think the biggest problem though is that like if you do get approached and they say Tomb Raider is popular, so turn this game that you're making into a Tomb Raider game, they should have done that. But they didn't.
Yeah.
They put the controls in and they gave him a gun, but that's about all. The enemies are not Tomb Raider enemies. There's no lock-on system. And you still have to jump across gaps. And I realized that those existed in Tomb Raider, but they had a much more robust, like, not a cinematic platformer, but cinematic platformer style, like, canned animations for when you were doing platforms and stuff in that game. This game is just a disaster. The title of our episode on Rascal is He Might Be a Car. And it's because of the way Rascal himself, the Rascal Kid, the bubblegum kid, controls, is like he has an unusual like speed momentum gain when you move, and he has tank controls. So he does operate like a video game car does.
Yeah, it almost makes the game easier to play if you think of him like that.
That's true. If they had swapped him out for a car, this would have been a funnier game.
Yeah, he has like a turning radius like a car does.
Yeah.
That's like one of the harder things. Like you kind of almost like, you don't drift like Croc does. Like literally, if you go around a turn, he'll like swing out. He doesn't do that quite, but there is like a weird like turning like a car kind of.
Yeah, because we've been describing them as tank controls, which is more or less like the closest that we can get to describing them, but they aren't truly tank controls, because in a tank controlled game, when you stop holding the forward button, you stop moving completely. And so when you turn right or left, you rotate in place. In Rascal, if you stop holding the forward button and then press right, he doesn't stop and turn right. He starts moving in an arc because he has this momentum that has to slow down. And if he had wheels, it would make sense physically. But he doesn't. He has legs and feet that amble along in this confused, like half-dead Frankenstein stagger that he does in order to sort of like get to his location that he ends at. And it's very weird to see. Watching someone play Rascal who is competent at Rascal is like watching a lunatic play a different game. You're like, there must be something you can do to make this look like a video game, but there just isn't. You just move at random, never stop or slow down, and the camera cannot focus on anything.
Yeah, you have to like readjust constantly for like what you're doing. And that can even just be to look in a certain direction.
Yep. Look, and even trying to get it to look in a certain direction is not a guarantee. You hope the camera will pan in the direction you want it to, but it does not necessarily do that.
Mm-hmm. So, Rascal was designed by the Jim Henson Creature Company.
Yeah.
Which is something that is just is extra funny about the game is that the Jim Henson logo comes up at the beginning. And I don't know if you rewatched the opening cinematic for this. It is glorious. Because, like, it is the Jim Henson logo, and then there's just, like, this, like, pre-Toy Story, like, bad 3D model of a character.
Yep.
Like, his in-game model looks, like, okay. But, like, in this, like, cinematic, like, it just looks so bad, and it's hysterical.
You're talking about the Rascal character, not Kronos?
Yeah,
Okay,
the Rascal himself looks like a melted plastic toy. And yeah, it's just really funny that they put that logo front and center, but like nothing in the game really looks like anything designed by the Jim Henson Company.
Yeah.
Except for maybe the villain.
Right.
Kronon is like the one cool design in the game.
I know that we brought this up specifically on the original Rascal episode that like that Kronon looks like he might have been designed by someone outside of the rest of the game. But I don't remember if if we factually checked that.
Yeah.
Or
I don't
if
think
that was
we
a
did
guess.
either. Yeah. It feels like a safe guess.
Yeah.
But we can't confirm. I know they also did design Rascal, or the Bubblegum Kid.
Right.
Whatever you want to call him.
But that's to me, that's the most surprising one, because Rascal himself is nothing. Rascal is a kid who may or may not be wearing leather pants, and sneakers and a shirt with a logo on it, and he has those like the Squirtle Squad angled shades.
Yeah.
And that's his whole design. Like it's not like an original. It is an original character, yes, but it is not an original character in the way that fucking Gonzo is. You know?
Yeah, it feels like they gave it to like an intern. They were like, it just feels like a like stock, generic 90s kid.
Yeah.
Number like 3B.
We talked about this actually on the Ape Escape episode, that Spike did not meet the like mascot ability of other platformer protagonists at the time. And like we said, that's probably why Ape Escape hasn't had as much of a lasting impact as other mascot platformers like Crash and Spyro did on the PlayStation. And Rascal is like that minus the good game. And so he was really left out in the cold. But like, I can't imagine, even as a kid, and I say this lying because I'm sure that as a kid I would have latched on to whatever you put in front of me, like a baby bird. But like looking at Rascal being like, oh hell yeah, love Rascal.
Yeah. So our friend Dan, who was on the original episode, had this game as a kid, and Dan is my cousin. And so I remember going to his house as a kid and playing this game, and it seeming like the coolest game ever. Like, I remember thinking it was like... I remember it seeming like it was really mysterious and interesting, and, like, I remember it seeming like as cool as, like, Mario 64 to me.
Right.
So I can attest to that, like, a kid at the time, I thought it was cool. I don't know that I particularly had any thoughts on the main character or not, but I think it did its job for the time well enough.
Yeah. And not only that, but I will say this is the positive Rascal traits segment of the Rascal podcast. The look of Rascal, not of Rascal himself, of the game, like the visual design, Well, the design is a mess, but
Yeah, it's not like consistent at all.
no, but the graphics don't look as bad as I remember them. I actually think that they're probably the best part of the game in terms of like technical quality. And I don't know if it's maybe because I know last time we played this on a PlayStation 2, and this time we played it on a PlayStation 1, like maybe the original hardware in some way. Maybe the TV was just a little bit brighter, but like it looked like not complete shit like I thought it was going to, coming back to it. So, there is that.
Yeah, no, it does look pretty good for a PlayStation 1 game.
Yeah. I will say, Chronon, we talked about the opening cutscene and how Rascal looks like a melted action figure. And Chronon doesn't look as bad, though he does look very funny.
Yeah. Yeah, his head looks like is hourglass shaped, and like the texture wrapping around the hourglass shape is very funny.
It sure is.
It almost kind of gives me like N Cortex from like Crash Bandicoot vibes.
He's kind of like a Cortex mixed with a Megamind.
There's a character actually in Crash 3 called like Entropy, I think.
Nice.
Who's like a Time Lord who's kind of similar. Maybe they ripped off Rascal.
Oh my god. When did Crash 3 come out?
After this, for sure.
Okay. Rascal, a secret pioneer of Crash Bandicoot. Maybe Crash is a car? Crash?
Crash Team Racing?
I'm putting the pieces together. I've got the conspiracy board up. But yeah, Kronos.
Pretty sure it's Chronon.
Cro-Magnon?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, probably. He doesn't look super bad in the cutscene because he is a cartoon villain that looks like a cartoon villain. In game, he does kind of just look like a blob, like a tall blob.
Yeah.
And his boss fights are maybe one of the dumbest things in the game, because it's kind of like a Bowser situation where they do the same thing for each fight, but there's just like an added wrinkle each time. But you do just run around him. All cases, which makes it impossible to look at him because the camera follows closely behind Rascal, the kid, and as you run around, you might catch a glimpse of him while you wait for his projectile volley to be over and get a couple of shots in. So the graphic quality really only goes so far, and it feels like the other problems with the game are almost there to compensate in ways where it's like, well, he doesn't look very good, so let's just make it so that you never get to look at him during the boss fight.
Yeah, at least that boss fight though feels like it has like a pattern to learn and like you understand it as a boss fight.
Yeah.
Whereas all the other boss fights in the game seem like they're buggy and don't work.
Yeah, we discussed maybe doing this for the podcast when it came out, and I think I said like, nah, it's not really worth it. If you look at the tables, we already have Dreams on our list, but I played Nintendo's version of Dreams, which is called Game Builder Garage, and all the other bosses in the game really feel like Game Builder Garage bosses. Like they were like, we have a model of a dragon. And so they put a thing that emanates fire in front of it, and occasionally it would rotate. And then they were like, there we go, dragon mini boss in the first level. And then later they were like, well, we still have that dragon model. Let's use it again for the final boss rush
But
thing.
we'll make him move this time.
Yeah, he actually moves around. It really feels like just whatever they had laying around kind of boss fights game.
Yeah, and they put the dragon in the first level as like a boss or mini boss encounter. But yeah, as he just sits there in the middle of the room. He's not hard to kill, but you don't get anything for killing him. So it does kind of feel like they wanted to have bosses in all the levels. but ended up cutting that and then just saving them for the end boss rush for whatever reason.
Yeah, you never really encounter other bosses just out and about.
No.
I think the movie studio level, I think, has like an event sort of thing. Isn't there like a part with is there like a UFO or some shit?
Maybe.
I kind of don't remember that, but there was something there. But for the most part, yeah, everything else follows a more standard, a bad standard platforming game style of level design. But I'll talk about that in a minute. So yeah, it does. A lot of the things in this game feels like incomplete ideas, and from the sound of it, and like I hate to be super fair to Rascal, because Rascal is a stupid bad game that you shouldn't play, but it is a game that definitely got completely fucked over by the system, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So rise against hierarchies. Don't let the publisher tell you to make your game play like fucking Lara Croft.
They really wanted to put boobs on the 10-year-old boy.
Rascal.
To sell more copies, but
Got PlayStation 1 boobs, too. They're not even worth putting on things. Do you know why I hate all the levels in Rascal?
I could make a few guesses, but...
Dude, go for it.
You can just say.
There's a trend. This game is part of two different trends in platformer design that were popular at the time, and both of them are bad and have been abandoned pretty much since. But this is extra egregious because of the control and camera issues that I discussed before, and that is the game has lives, and it kicks you to the main menu when you run out of lives. There aren't checkpoints in the game, and
If you have a memory card, you can't save.
yeah,
And
you can
just,
save.
When it boots you back to the main menu, you can just go load.
Right. But it's still like, it's a very harsh punishment for dying, because some of the levels are incredibly long, and the reason they're long is because of the other trend that existed at the time, which was just make your players collect a bunch of thing. In this case, it is pieces of an hourglass. I think you have to collect 6 of them in every single fucking level.
Mm-hmm, and you have to get the 3 keys.
You have to get the 3 keys, which is a prerequisite for collecting the hourglass pieces, which are mostly in enemies, but sometimes are just like around.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to stretch your content, because if you just have an entrance and an exit, the player can kind of skip stuff that you worked on. And so you can make your game feel longer by making them check every single room to look for these items. But what it does in practice is, because Rascal itself is such a bad game to play, and losing in Rascal sucks so hard, you then have this push and pull situation where it's like, maybe you should have just let the levels be shorter and have the hourglass pieces as collectibles. Maybe the keys are the only bar, something like that. Because every level feels like an enormous pain in the ass to get through.
Yeah, I think the hourglass pieces are fine. Like, I think like in like a 3D platformer, like wanting to like have a more go explore and, around the levels, kind of more open kind of thing going on is fine. I think it's the keys that I don't like because those just gate different parts of the levels,
Right?
And that doesn't seem like it accomplishes anything.
I feel like you could accomplish the same thing with either of them, right? Like,
yeah.
Either you have to collect all of the hourglass pieces, or you have to collect all the keys. And to me, the keys would be less egregious because there's fewer of them.
Sure.
I guess if they designed it with that in mind and they still wanted to stretch the length of the game out as much as they possibly could, they would just be 10 keys, and it would be misery. But at least then, each key expands the amount of space that you have.
Yeah.
So it's actually easier to find them at the beginning, you have a smaller area to search for. Then once you find the key, you move on. There's another area to search in. The hourglass piece could be fucking anywhere.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, I gotta go back to the dungeon. I kill the dragon, obviously, to get the hourglass piece. No, he doesn't have one. The chainmail knight with sunglasses does, though.
Yeah. It's like, I feel like if they didn't have the keys, or if they just had like one collectible, it would like make for like, you wouldn't have to add those extra areas. You could focus on like a smaller area and like place your collectibles like more, in like a more designed way.
Yeah, more. Yeah. Do like the skate letters. Yeah. Find a line.
Yeah, it's like it's trying to do two different things.
It is.
With the gating and also open exploration. Like, you got to pick a lane.
Rascal needed to pick a lane so badly, and not just because he's a car.
Yeah.
And it is illegal for him to drive in 2 lanes.
Yeah.
But yeah, because it's just spread out all over the fucking place. Because the other problem with the game is that it just has infinitely respawning enemies that just have no rules. They have a bunch of fucking anarchist enemies that spawn in wherever they fucking feel like. Whenever they feel like.
God, yeah. I can't believe those didn't get cut when they changed the controls.
No.
Because, like, having the infinitely spawning enemies is such a big problem when the camera's never pointing where you want.
Yep.
And you just get hit by stuff that you didn't see.
They almost always spawn off screen unless you're, like, standing in the corner of the room looking out at the whole thing.
Yeah, and sometimes they spawn underneath of you. Mm-hmm. Which is weird.
It is weird. It seems like that would have been the easiest problem to fix.
Yeah.
But they will just spawn. You could be like mid-jump. And like Rascal doesn't jump on stuff like Mario, but he does ground pound on stuff like Mario. Mm-hmm. So you have to like, if something spawns underneath of you, you have to react with the ground pound immediately or else you're just taking damage. Precious damage that if you take enough of it might send you all the way back to the fucking main menu to load your game again. So it did feel bad to play in even more ways than we originally thought.
Yeah, it's also like inconsistent too. Like with I think you like briefly touched on it with collectibles. It's like sometimes they're in enemies, sometimes they're like in a place you have to platform up to. Sometimes they're randomly in a sparkling statue that you have to shoot. Like there's no consistency, which also like adds to the cumbersomeness of the game.
Yeah, just confusion overall, really.
Yeah.
To call back to the original episode, you have to determine what is water that will transport you to a new area, or a pool of deadly water that will kill you instantly.
Yeah, like the inconsistencies.
Yeah.
Like in the Atlantis level, there's like a pit of water that I ran by many times before I was like, well, they put a bubblegum power-up over the center of it. That probably means I can jump in.
Right.
But you can't be sure. So you just have to kind of take a leap of faith.
And before that, there's a room where you jump across moving platforms over just regular water, not lava, not poison, just water. And if you fall into it, you just die. Yeah. Like, the signaling is terrible. And if you're going to be a pedant about it, here is the thing. The water that kills you will have a shark in it. The water that doesn't kill you had a power-up above it. But the water before that you platform up also hurts you, but doesn't kill you. It's like just regular damage. That one is a waterfall, so I guess it's like moving water. But I'm pretty sure that even if you're standing somewhere that isn't in the waterfall, you still take damage. So basically, get your shit together. Water can't be 3 different things. That's way too much. Also, bubblegum power-up I've played through this game 0 times, but I've played it at least 2 times in my life and have no idea how the gun works. Like, what does the ammo do? I assume it makes the shots more powerful, but running out doesn't stop you from shooting them.
It's range, I think.
It's range.
Yeah, I think the red, you give it all fill all the way up, it's red. Those bubbles go the farthest, and then they go to a point where they become green. Those goes less far, and then all like down low, they're blue, and those go the shortest.
Okay.
I only know this because Dan says it on the original episode.
Yeah, that is not information that I was able to retain or develop on my own from my experience playing the game.
Yeah, like there's this walkthrough.
It's like an infamous walkthrough for us at this point.
An infamous walkthrough for Rascal. That I think it's just on IGN or like GameFAQs or something like that. And it's written really funny. In a way, like I think it was described as like either by a child or by someone who English isn't their first language.
Sure.
And I think that guy, aside from anybody who worked on the game, has to be like the leading authority on Rascal. But then I feel like Steven and Dan are up there for like people in the world that know the most about this game.
I mean, that's almost assuredly
true. I'm prone to hyperbole, but like that might be a true statement.
I have to say, that guide, that is like, first of all, I'm like 100% sure that it was written by a child. And I know this because he says this level is fun when he talks about some levels, and only a small child could think that. But also, it would have been written sometime around 1998 when the game
2003, released. I think.
Is when the guide came out?
Yeah.
I mean, he was really writing that guide for no one.
He mentions it that like he got to the Atlantis level and found it so difficult that he's just put the game down for like 5 years or whatever.
I mean, the Atlantis level is pretty hard.
It is. It's the thinking man's level.
It is the thinking man's level, as the guy describes it.
Yeah. I feel like it has to not be a kid, but I think I just always underestimate the writing abilities of kids, because I feel like I couldn't... It would have taken all of my efforts to not finish writing a game walkthrough as a kid.
Yeah, it is.
But, I mean, there's just different types of people. But,
it's true. Yeah, because I read a lot of guides when I was a kid on GameFAQs, and I don't know how many of those were written by kids versus adults. We'll say it was probably a teen.
Yeah.
Or at least like a young adult, because
like
they wrote it.
13-year-old.
Right, because they said they put the game down for 5 years. So there's age even there. My point, though, my grander point, is that person is in their 30s now, minimum.
Yeah.
Could be in their 40s, I don't know. And if somehow you ever hear any of this, you should be so fucking proud of that guide. Like, it is something that if I had written, I would be parading around. Like, look at this hysterical guide for Rascal. Because not only is it funny, and we quote it constantly, take out the reptile. First of all.
He'll tan you a new hide.
But it also is just good, relevant information about the video game Rascal. Like, it's a good guide that tells you where things are and gives you strategy tips.
But it has like weird little tangents and comments.
Yeah. So it is really like, if that's the takeaway, Rascal, do not recommend. Andy, would you recommend Rascal?
I actually would.
God
but
damn. All right.
Like in the room kind of way.
Okay, well, we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get
That's
to
more
it.
Final thoughts.
But anyway, I mean, no, I wouldn't.
Yeah. Hey, would you recommend the GameFAQs guide to Rascal?
Yes.
Yeah, it's fucking amazing.
Insert Drake meme.
Oh, yeah.
Rascal.
Rascal guide. Yeah. Love that guide. It's super good.
Yeah. We should get it printed out and bound in leather.
That seems. I mean, it's definitely something that can happen.
Like imprinted in the leather on the front.
That would be a good idea. That we will do. And nobody listening to this will know the wiser. On the subject of things that we talked about on the previous Rascal episode, it is still funny to me that they specifically call out in this game's narrative that Rascal's dad works for NATO. Like, I assume that they did it as like a way to they wanted to give him like an important job, which is why he's being targeted by Chronon and why his kid has to do all this. But I do also want to say that when we did that episode originally, I said that NATO was a treaty organization instead of a trade organization, which has brought me and all future generations of mine great shame. So I would like to rectify that now. I believe I did know that at the time and misspoke, but it's been haunting me for 7 years.
Your ancestors can now rest in peace once again.
They were getting restless, so I am kind of glad we did this episode.
Okay. Glad we could put that one straight. It does kind of feel like they wanted him to be like a government scientist, but it was the 90s where like there weren't any like wars or anything happening. So like, I don't know, like what's going on now? I guess he works for NATO.
He's gonna work for NATO, I guess.
I don't know.
People sort of know what that is. People have such a baseline understanding of its existence that it works as something that they probably won't think too much about.
Yeah.
Is still funny though, in even in retrospect. Do you want to talk about music for 1 second?
Yeah.
Castle Past. Castle Past is the first level of this game, and its theme is a certified banger. And that's pretty much it. The theme that plays in the house is funny in how understated it is, and I have zero recollection of any other song that plays in the game.
Yeah, I think it's all just like fine music, but yeah, Castle Pass is the real banger. All the real G's know Castle Pass. But yeah, the rest of it's just like serviceable of the time music.
Yeah, but man, that Castle Pass really knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I mean, this game might as well just be Castle Pass.
Yeah,
like the map is also pretty iconic.
For us anyway.
For us. It's like a drawn out, like 3D conceptualized map.
The way that no one would be able to do.
Yeah. Like the whole like Metroid Prime style kind of map is what it's trying to be, but like as a sketch by a child.
Metroid Prime, another game that ripped off Rascal. Metroid Prime, Crash Bandicoot 3, where will the list end?
It's like trying to like represent like the grain silo and how there's like platforms that move and like you can move. Like none of it is at all interpretable at a glance.
Yeah, I still have a strong memory of playing this game the first time and being like, I don't know where we're going, and pausing the game and seeing that there was a map, and then opening it and realizing just how unhelpful it was. And then also the photorealistic pencil in the bottom corner that I insisted was incorporated into the episode art. Potentially my greatest artistic contribution to the podcast was making that one suggestion.
Yeah, probably.
I honestly can't think of a better one. Or a second one. So
you suggested putting the N inside the BB tank on the Death Stranding episode.
Oh shit, I'm killing it with these. With these two suggestions in 250 different episodes. But yeah, good shit. Rascal rules.
Ain't he cool?
Ain't he cool?
Bubble Kid, you rule.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about with Rascal the video game?
I don't think so. I think we hit all of the most significant things.
Yeah, I would agree.
The things that stuck in my memory from the last time.
Yeah. I don't know how much... There's not much else to cover. The game... We didn't mention this. The villain Chronon controls time. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
And you go through different levels that are themed around eras and places. And the thing that makes that interesting is nothing, because every game did this at the time. There was, I guess, giving you a reason for why it was happening is the most unique thing about it. Because sometimes they just be like, "Go dinosaurs here." Mm-hmm. But Rascal at least is like, you're in the dinosaur part of the game, so you better be prepared for that. And that's all.
It is like hard to tell that you're even time traveling though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's just like, in different rooms.
Yeah, it's like set up by the story, but it doesn't. It's very easy to forget. / just doesn't feel like that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like Atlantis feels more just like a fantastical platformer level and less like a period of time going to.
Atlantis is famously not a real place.
Yeah, and also like. It's like the level's supposed to be like split into sections where it's like each level has like a past version, a present version, and a future version.
Right.
And it's like hard to tell what any of that is.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of the time.
Like, especially because so many of them are set in places that don't like. There's no established future, right? Like castles are not going to make a big comeback in the future. The Aztecs, famously, again, not around.
Yeah, the lumber yard is the present, I think, of the Aztec level.
Right, and I mean, you can look back at what was that game? Eternal Darkness did this as well, but at least in Eternal Darkness they called out when you were going back to the same places. This kind of does, but not in a way that's readable or recognizable.
Yeah.
I would not have guessed Lumberyard was the present of Aztec. At least not, at first glance.
Yeah, it's some biting commentary.
Oh, yeah, man. Because we're deforesting. It makes sense. Rascal actually has a pretty good environmental message. I'll give it that. Oh, yeah. Also, there's these, like, weird skateboarding slalom sections that are just blind, random guessing.
Mm-hmm. It's like, we want those Mario slide levels, but make them bad, please.
But make them no good. Do we have feces thoughts?
Past, present, and feces thoughts.
Yeah, let's go with that one. Do we have past, present, and future thoughts?
My past, present, and future thoughts are this game is bad. But it does hold like a interesting, like nostalgic place for me, given that it's like a game that I had limited access to as a kid and therefore seemed mysterious and cool. Mm-hmm. And then playing it as an adult, several years ago, and it just being really funny to find out that it was supposedly the worst game for the PlayStation 1. So, like, in the experience of, like, doing this for the podcast, like, I kind of had, like, a blast with the game. We played it together. We just, like, put in a cheat code to just play all the levels, just warp to them.
Yeah.
And I went over to Dan and Steven's house, and they watched them actually play the game. And I compared it earlier to like The Room, or like a bad B-movie version of a video game. And I don't think it's going to have that effect for everybody, but it really does have that effect for me, where anytime we boot up this game, it's making me laugh. Like everything about it's like terrible and fighting you, and it's just all funny to me. Like I don't know, there's like some kind of charm to it, and some kind of like I don't know if like I'm giving it too much credit just because I like it for nostalgic reasons, but like I feel like there's like some passion in there. Like they had ideas and they wanted to make a game, and it just all fell through. And like I feel like I can kind of feel that in the game, and that gives it a kind of charm to me. But maybe I'm just blowing it out my ass. I don't know. But I've enjoyed my time with this game, despite how bad it is. So, if it sounds funny to you, it costs 1 cent to buy it.
I don't know. It's inflation and all. Maybe 3-4 cents now.
So I think it's a fun like game to play if you want to play a bad game. If that sounds funny to you, but make no mistake, it is pretty bad.
Yeah. It's funny because. Like, I think about this game not nostalgically in the sense that it was something I played as a kid. I had never heard of it. But nostalgically in tune with the podcast. Like, I remember being asked on our Discord once what our least favorite game that we had talked about, and then, like, parenthetical, obviously excluding Rascal. Like, Rascal has set itself up because it came so early in the podcast as a game that we made fun of. Like an old bad game that we did early on, and it was something that we could constantly refer back to, which you can't do with a game that isn't remarkable. So when I say that Rascal is remarkable, I may be using deceptive language, but I am not lying. I agree with what you said, basically. I think that Rascal is a good game to go to if you're trying to find that so bad it's good kind of game, because it is still like you said, there is a cheat code that lets you just go to other levels. You don't have to labor away at Castle Pass for hours to figure out how to get through it. It has this amazing companion piece in the form of this random game facts walkthrough that is incredible. And just like there are all these factors that make me very warm toward Rascal, despite the fact that the game itself is poo-poo ass trash that I don't like very much. It's definitely not one that you want to play by yourself for giggles. But if you're in a group of people that this is your jam for some reason, then Rascal is definitely one of those games.
Yeah, like this might be just dating myself. But there's this old YouTube show called Continue, where people send them in old games, they play it for a while, and then they say whether or not they would continue playing it. It's the perfect kind of game for that format. If you're somebody who's like, I want to just check out some random game that might be funny, it's like perfect for that.
Yeah. So Andy, would you recommend Rascal?
If you fit the description I just said, then yes.
Me too. I recommend Rascal as well. Rascal gets 2 recommendations from the NOCLIP podcast.
I would continue.
Okay, there we go. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP Pocket this week.
What will the die dictate that we're playing next time?
We'll get there.
All right, here it comes. No whammies. 11.
11? Man, May is weird. Next time, we're going to be talking about Octodad, Dadliest Catch.
Okay, so this is the one pocket game on the list for Mystery May that I'm like, that's the most NOCLIP Pocket perfect game that we've never done for some reason. It's been on the list for like years. And it's
literally
perfect for NOCLIP Pocket, but we've just not done it.
It's actually, of the ones that are on the Pocket list, I think the one that is edged closest, like, we will have put it on there, and then, like, some shit will come out, and we'll be like, oh, we'll just kick that can down the road.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like a physics-based game, by the way.
Yeah, it's like a comedy physics game.
Yeah, where you're an octopus.
Yes.
Anyway.
In a suit.
Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find links to our Twitter account, our Discord, where you can give us suggestions for games to play. You can find our YouTube channel and all of our old episodes, including episode on Rascal. We just did an epilogue episode similar to this on Shadow of the Colossus. Game's also pretty similar, so that works out well. You can listen to us be dumbfounded by other games that we think have some questionable quality, such as Space Station Silicon Valley or No More Heroes, on those episodes, if you would like.
Or Diddy Kong Racing.
Or Diddy Kong Racing, if you want the hottest takes this side of the fucking sun.
Smash the like button. Like and comment and subscribe right now. It came from Castle Pest.